This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
Good afternoon, everyone. Bruchim Abayim, Shalom Aleichem. Hope everybody is doing well. Thank you, everybody, for joining. Hope everybody had a nice Yom Tov and a great campaign. Thank you, everybody, for participating. If anybody wants, they could still participate. You could go to our site, rabbidg.com. We're continuing in our series on Orchos Chaim of the Rosh. The Seder is sponsored by the Saka family, Leila Nishmas, Basya, Bas, Shmuel, whose yard site is Chaf Beis Elul. Her neshama should have an aliyah. Okay, we're up to Ois Kuf Yud Aleph, 111. Well, 111 always reminds us of Ein Oid Movadoi. There's no one other than Hashem. Because the Rashi Tevois of Ein Oid Movadoi are 111. Anyway, the Rosh says as follows: Al tismoich lidei matnas basar v'dam. Do not rely on gifts of flesh and blood. V'sa'avoid levakesh mizanesecha. Work to seek your sustenance. Do not rely on human gifts. Don't rely on them. But rather you should physically work to earn your keep. Now, interesting, Rav Goldberg says that the hakpada over here is not to be soymech, not to be boiteach on gifts of basar v'dam, like it says al tivtechu v'nadivim, or like it says in Yirmiyah, or hagever sheyiftach ba'adam. Therefore, one should, since a person should not trust in wealthy people or in generous people or people who make promises, because people could make assurances and they don't make true to their promises. And therefore, one should always earn their livelihood with their own hands. One should go to work. In other words, get a job. Don't rely on your koilel paycheck. Don't rely on government handout. Don't rely on your rich uncle, but rather rely only on HaKadosh Baruch Hu. However, there is a hanhaga, the hanhaga of the Rashbi, where you're not relying on Nedivim, you're relying only on HaKadosh Baruch Hu. But that is only for the rare individual. L'yechidei segul, like the Gemara says, many people tried to do that and they were not successful. It only works for those who are on a high level of bitachon, that they don't put any trust in the nadiv. Even on the most generous benefactor, who could have been more generous than Noach? And still, the Yoina said, better to have something bitter from the hands of God than something sweet from the hands of Noach. Now, the Rambam writes in Hilchos Talmud Torah, so you say, what do you mean? That flies in the face of the practice of many people today who are learning or are in what we call Klei Kodesh, and are they really going to work? So you could say, somebody's a Rebbe in a yeshiva, or somebody has a job teaching, so then there's a salary. Rav Moshe calls that umanus nikia v'kala. That's already a job. That's already a profession where you're not reliant on people. But you could still ask, maybe in the 70s and 80s, a person could have supported themselves as a Rebbe or a Rav and not rely on anybody. But nowadays, it's extreme with the expenses that people have. It is extremely hard for someone who is in Klei Kodesh, even with a job, to be completely dependent just on their job. And here we have the Rishonim telling us that don't rely on gifts of people. Get a regular job. So the Rambam writes in Hilchos Talmud Torah, Halacha, Parak Aleph Halacha Tes, that the great sages of Israel were wood choppers, were water carriers, and they learned Torah day and night. And these were some of the greatest of our sages, including Hillel v'Shammai. And the Rosh says in a tshuva that any Talmud Chacham who Torah is their profession, and their malacha is arai, which means that they go to work, but as soon as the job is over, they run to the learning. They're not mavatal even a moment. That is necessary because Yafeh Talmud Torah derech eretz, and if you don't have any job, soifa betela. So it seems like at least our early Rishonim were in favor that even if a person spends the majority of their time learning, they should get some form of occupation. However, Reb Chaim Kanievsky points out that's only where their work will not take away from their learning. But if the job will take away from the learning, then the learning would take precedence. Lamaisa, Rav Goldberg does not quote this Bir Halacha. I believe the Bir Halacha is in Siman Kuf Nun Hey, that the whole discussion of whether you could take gifts is only in the times of the Rishonim. But nowadays, because we're so weak, it would be nearly impossible for somebody to say, well, I'll become a very big Talmid Chacham, and I'll be a water carrier and plumber on the side, so you probably will end up not making a living and not reaching the level of godless Batar that they could have otherwise reached. And therefore the Chavetz Chaim concludes that in our generation, one who is learning is permitted to take support from those who are willing to give it, and one should not refuse it, because in the end it will cause a diminution to one's learning. Rav Goldberg cites the tshuva of Rav Moshe that nowadays there's no issue at all in taking support. In fact, it's not even midas chasidus not to take support. Just the opposite. Rav Moshe says somebody who doesn't want to take support from others, it is the Yetzer Hara speaking, who is just trying to take the person away from learning. So, if somebody is in the position that they're learning in Koilel, they should not feel that there's anything mitigated about their learning or lessened by the fact that they're being supported by others. And if someone's in the position that they're supporting son-in-law or son or something like that, they shouldn't feel, let the guy go, let him get a job. If you're in the position that you're able to support, you're doing the Jewish people a service, and like the bottom of the Aron, it's really the Torah that carries us. Okay, next. Al yihi mamoin shalcha chaviv alecha yoiser migufcha kamay laver al hameches v'leches yichidi. Don't love your money more than your health. You want to sort of try to get around the taxes, yeah, but you might be endangering your life. You want to go out at night to get a job in the pitch black in the forest, yeah, but you might be endangering your life. So don't love your money more than you love your health. Now, I would add, this is probably directly following Kuf Yud Aleph. In Kuf Yud Aleph, it spoke about, don't rely on others for parnasa. Get a job to support yourself. And that's considered a form of avodas Hashem. So one might say, look, my money is very hard earned. It came at the expense of my learning. Here the Rosh is saying, take off time from learning to get a job. So one may then have a certain chavivus for their money. After all, they gave up some ruchnias to be able to get a job. No, don't love your money more than your guf. The Mefarshim ask on this a very big question. And that is, Chazal tell us in many, many places that tzaddikim love their money more than they love their guf. The Gemara in Chulin, Daf Tzadi Aleph, Vayivasar Yaakov Levadoi, Amar Rabbi Elazar, that he stayed behind for the small jugs. From here we see Mikan letzaddikim shechaviv aleim amoinam yoiser migufam. Why, says the Gemara? Because they don't want to come to steal. Also, we find in the Gemara in Sotah, Daf Yud Beis, that Yocheved took a tevas goime. Why a tevas goime? Because chavivin mikan letzadikim shemamoinam chaviv aleim yoser migufam. So, let's see, Yocheved preferred to take a tevas goime, his value was little, even though it would have been a better protection, because it was cheaper. So how could the Rosh say you shouldn't love your money more than your body? But Chazal say tzaddikim love their money more than their guf, because whatever money they have, they earned with their hard work, and they didn't cut any corners, and they did it as avodas Hashem. So why would the Rosh make a statement that flies in the face of Shas in Chulin Tzadi Aleph and Soito Yud Beis? So Rabbi Cheskel Starna says it depends. If the reason you love your money is because you hate stealing, so whatever little money you have that you earned in a kosher way is beloved by you, that's a good thing. But if the reason you love your money is because you love money, that's a bad thing. Or you could say, it depends why you love your money. If you love your money because it's something that you earned with your hard work and you didn't steal, that's a good thing. If you love the money because you love money, that would be something that's not proper. But that's a question that the Mefarshim speak about at length, that the comments of the Rosh seem to fly in the face of the Gemara. Now it's interesting, even by Yaakov Avinu, where the Gemara says Yaakov Avinu loved his money more than he loved his guf, the Gemara there says that we learn from Yaakov Avinu that a Talmid Chacham should never go out at night by himself, because look what happened to Yaakov Avinu. So the Gemara contradicts itself. First it says, oh, look at Yaakov Avinu, we see tzaddikim love their money more than they love their guf, and then the Gemara says, don't do what Yaakov Avinu did. So it must be, Yaakov Avinu did not really realize that he'd be endangering his life. Maybe he put himself in inconvenience, but he didn't realize he would be in danger. But if somebody is aware that it's a danger, chas v'shalom, could a person endanger themselves just to save a few bucks? Okay, we'll continue as Hashem tomorrow. Good to see everybody. Bracha v'atzlacha. Have a wonderful day. Kol tov. Bye-bye.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.